everybody, and welcome to this Cities Are Listening on urban food systems, nutrition, and the climate emergency. Before yielding the floor to our Secretary General, Emilia Saiz, for some opening remarks, just a few technical notes from my side. Please be aware that interpretation is available in English, Spanish, and French at the bottom right of your screen. Please unmute yourself when you are talking, and please turn on your video as well when you will speak. Now, without further ado, Emilia Saiz, Secretary General, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Massimo and UCLG colleagues for making this space available. Thank you to all the partners that have joined us today in this Cities Are Listening experience. Since the very beginning of the pandemic, cities, local and regional governments from around the world have been coming together almost weekly to share their challenges, what they are learning from this pandemic, and we have put in motion one of the biggest collective learning exercises that the community of the local and regional governments international movement has known. And Cities Are Listening are the spin-off of the initial live learning experiences, because with Cities Are Listening, we want to demonstrate that for us, the international action is not only about being listened to, that putting our voices in the international scene and trying to impact international policies, but also about developing policies with communities, putting communities at the center of everything and having their expectations and their dream impact the way that we are shaping our future. That is what Cities Are Listening spaces are trying to offer to everybody. So, and that is the context that we are meeting in today. Today, we are very excited to touch upon a very critical issue for humanity, but also for this urban era, which is food. There are very few things that determine our culture, our being, our enjoyment of life as much as food. And there are also very few of those essential things that we need to survive as a species that we feel more detached from in the urban era, in a certain sense. So we understand the gastronomy and the excitement around food, but probably not the system that is producing our food. Today, we're going to be looking at food, nutrition, and the climate emergency. I just read somewhere, and that comes from the World Economic Forum, a study that says that actually in the coming 40 years, farmers will need to produce the amount of food that we haven't been able to produce in the past 10,000 years. And all of this in the context of a climate emergency. Can you imagine the stress that our systems are going to experience? So I think it is very relevant to have this discussion. It's relevant to ensure that cities are not only seen as consumers of food, but also as part and parcel of the system. This is why cities like Barcelona are so engaged in this discussion, and why it is important that they are participating in this initiative. It is also why cities from our membership are contributing to the creation of centers where we learn about this, like the Well Sustainable Food Center that is hosted by the city of Valencia. And of course, a very important partner in this thinking for all of us is FAO. And all of these partners are here today with us. So we're going to start by hearing from all of them. Our hope is that in the roadmap towards the food summit that is going to, the food system summit that is going to be taking place in September in New York within the framework of the General Assembly, we will make sure that inputs from local and regional governments are recognizable. So we are very proud to be part of the Urban Working Group, and we hope that this discussion will also contribute to the dialogue that working group is preparing. So this event today is not only an interesting space where we're going to be learning from each other, but it's actually connected to international policy making. And I think that is something very relevant that we should all touch upon. Access to food, the stress to the system, and the relationship between the urban area and those food systems. In UCLG, we say that we need to work on the democratic access to food and also on the production and consumption of food, changing the patterns, because it's going to determine how many people are we going to be able to feed. Many of us think that the current food system is not shaped to feed people, but to actually other purposes. I hope that the thinking today will help us advance on some concrete recommendations about the role that local and regional governments can play. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the Commissioner on Social, Economic, Local Development and Food Policy of the city of Barcelona, a very important member for us that hosts UCLG World Headquarters in the city. Álvaro Porro, a usted la palabra.
Gracias, Emilia. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. I see some familiar faces. So hello to everybody, and thank you very much for the invitation to Barcelona City and to myself. And it's an honor to share this panel with you, and especially with Emilia and Marcela in this opening moment. Basically, when I look at the topic of the panel, my first reflection was that this could be a good summary of what is the lighthouse we have in our food policy in Barcelona and in the projects we are trying to launch. And I think it stressed one of the most interesting characteristics of food for policy making and for a lot of things. That is that there is an amazing, strong intersection between what is good for our health and what is good for the planet health. And this is extremely clear in the case of food. It's not always as clear in other topics, but especially with food, it's extremely clear. And that gives us an amazing chance, an amazing opportunity to work on that topic from the perspective of cities and from the perspective of policy making in cities. I don't want to get much farther or much deeper in that connection, because I think it's kind of obvious to a lot of you, and I think there's a lot of people that is going to participate in this panel that could explain much better than me all this connection. But I really want to share this feeling that we have in Barcelona, and I think a lot of other cities has, that we have to take advantage of this connection I just said between health and environment, or between the opportunity to change and improve our health conditions and the possibilities to change the environmental and climate change situation. I would like to get a bit deeper in sharing what are we trying to do in Barcelona, in hoping that this is going to be kind of inspiring and motivating for other cities, and that we could somehow help to engage you in some kind of proposal we wanna share with you. 2021, we decided Barcelona was going to have a central topic based on sustainable food. In fact, we are developing a project, we call it Sustainable Food Capital, inspired by our friends in Valencia. And at the end of the day, this is basically an excuse, and I'm very honest on that. It's basically an excuse to work in 4 different aspects. One for us is like, let's launch dozens of new projects and policies addressing food inequality, food procurement, food school programs, organic products extension in our markets, wholesale and public markets roles, farmers selling channels, urban agricultural planning. So all these kind of policies that we can address from our cities, how we can take the opportunity of this 2021, and that's what we're doing in Barcelona, and launch dozens of new projects that hopefully are gonna open a new path for the future for us. Second, we are organizing dozens of cultural, educational, artistic, scientific activities that could bring the conversation on food system change into the center of the city. How we want the citizens of Barcelona to experience and practice about food system change. Third element, and looking very much towards the future, we want to build up a food city strategy looking at 2030 with the lighthouse of the Sustainable Goal Development Goals. And that, of course, is a way to make sure that this is not just something that we do for 1 year, but it's giving us a whole new phase, a new era for the food policies in Barcelona. And the fourth element, and is the one I would like to get a bit deeper and share with you, is that we are going to host in Barcelona in October, and from the 19th to the 21st, the 7th Global Forum of Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. Most of you probably also part of the Milan Pact. And as you know, every year we not 2020, but yes, normally every year we have a meeting to share and exchange best practices, challenges, etc. So we are going to do that. Hopefully, if the pandemic allows us to travel, we could join again. And I'm really strongly invite you to come and join us in October in Barcelona. But otherwise, we will of course has also the online option for those who could not maybe travel on that moment. Which we all don't know. No, it's a very uncertain situation right now. We are going to be very much focused on climate change within all the different topics we could tackle from food perspective. We're going to be focused on climate change because we think it's a very, very cross-cutting topic related to not only food, but to a lot of other things, but also because it's going to be short time before the Glasgow Climate Change Summit in November in Glasgow. And we want to take the opportunity of that Forum of Cities of the Milan Pact to raise the voice of cities and bring a very strong message to Glasgow in a moment that we all know that almost 1/3 of the emission of gases that provoke the climate change are related to our food system directly or indirectly. So there's no way we can tackle climate change without tackling the change in our food system. So we're going to be focused very much on that and taking this momentum right before the COP26. And I would like to share a very concrete proposal that we are very much working on now. So it's nothing finished, it's something completely in the process of development. But I would like to share some headlines. So because I would like you to join somehow in the future, and I hope we could share soon more concrete information. We are working together with C40 and Milan City, but we will of course want to this ULC to join and a lot of your cities. Basically, we are working in something we call the Barcelona Goods, Food and Climate Change Challenge. Drawing on the C40 declaration and within the Milan Pact framework, the Barcelona Challenge is a call to cities to engage in a series of commitments related to the transformation of our food systems in order to tackle climate emergency. This challenge offers grounding indicators to help grasping the positive impacts these commitments could entail in practical terms for the city, its citizens and environment. Moreover, it also represents a joint strategy to show the commitment and leadership of cities on the food climate nexus, especially regarding, as I said before, on the Glasgow conference in November. Our reading of the situation, of the context right now, is that in this year, in 2021, as Emilia was also saying, we think it's a bit of a turning point in the role of cities, how they are being recognized internationally as key agents shaping food and climate actions. The UN Food Systems Summit that will culminate in September, I think is demonstrating and is going to be demonstrating the role of food system will play in achieving the goals of the sustainable development. And we want to make sure that also cities' voice is heard there, together with the help of ULC. But likewise, allocating both the importance of transforming the food system to tackle the climate emergency and also the role of cities can play in the transformation, I think will be critical issues in the conference in Glasgow. So reading this context, reading this momentum, we want to give the chance to propose for other cities, for other networks, for expert groups, for agencies to work together in somehow identify this window of opportunity and address food climate change, food climate nexus, and launch this what we call Good Food Declaration, given that it's based on the C40 Good Food Declaration, and in the context of the 7th Global Forum in Barcelona in October. So this basically what we are trying to achieve with this challenge is a new call for action that is aimed to expand and develop and build urban food commitments that have already been previously made, but get them a new force, a new energy, and get other cities on board. These processes are already underway regarding production, distribution, and consumption. But we think we have to take the opportunity of this 2021 to give a big push on that. Barcelona Good Food and Climate Challenge aims to become a tool that can be used to enable local authorities all over the world to engage in climate action by compiling, visualizing, and catalyzing specific measures that target different fields of the agri-food system, and which will have an impact on mitigation and adaptation to climate emergency. So I hope this could be a very good tool that help us to raise the voice of cities in Glasgow in November. I hope you all can join somehow. As I said, we will come soon with more concrete information, but I wanted to share today with you some headlines to kind of start warming up and get our energy online for this challenge. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner, for this invitation, which I think everybody finds interesting. I think that is very much our role to make sure that we all connect the dots, of course, with our sister organizations working on this area, ICLEI, C40, and others. And as generalist organization, for us, the importance is also to connect the dots between those that are consuming and those that are also producing. Think that territories are the producers of food, and I think the connections between the Barcelona commitment, the Good Food Declaration, and the territories is also very, very relevant. So I hope we can make those connections as we progress in this work together towards Glasgow and the Food System Summit. So Marcela Villarreal, a good friend of cities and local governments, used to our narrative, well acquainted with our ecosystem, I would say, and Director of Partnerships of the Division of Food and Agriculture in the Organization of the UN, of FAO. Marcela, a ti la palabra, bienvenida.
Muchísimas gracias, Emilia. Emilia, Álvaro, it's a real pleasure for FAO to be in this webinar with UCLG, with the city of Barcelona, Barcelona 2021 World Capital of Sustainable Food, and of course also our partner and friend, the SEMAS. I think that as we are in the middle and hopefully getting out of this COVID-19 pandemic, I think one of the important effects of the pandemic has been an increased awareness of the food we're eating, where it comes from, how it's produced. And hopefully also that will take us to an increased awareness of food systems and how the different parts of the system interact and work together. But there's also, I think, a very important effect of the pandemic too. And it's also a growing demand from the citizens of cities, and are demanding their governments to have better food policies in place. And not only a demand that we're seeing in different cities of citizens wanting to understand better food policies that will not only provide them food during a pandemic, but also to be prepared for other emergencies in the future. So greater accountability on the food area from citizens worldwide. And actually an FAO survey showed the really important role that cities and local governments have been playing in reducing the impact of COVID, especially on hunger, but also obviously, naturally, on health. We believe that cities obviously have a very catalytic role in accelerating actions towards food system transformation, transforming worldwide food systems for them to be more sustainable and of course more resilient, as we're seeing impact of a disaster nobody expected. 70% of all food is consumed or absorbed at the urban level. And we also know that cities generate 70% of global waste. And therefore, of course, cities and local areas are really fundamental in terms of determining what is going to happen with the world food system, and how are we going to be able to build back better in the wake of COVID-19. We know FAO data has shown that just last year, the number of food insecure people worldwide has increased because of the pandemic. That's in addition to the other causes of increase of hunger, but by anything between 80 and 130 million people worldwide, in addition to the 690 million people who are chronically hungry. So we know that this pandemic not only increases inequalities, it's a pandemic that thrives on inequality and generates ever more inequality. And a lot of that inequality has to do with food, access to food, who gets it and who doesn't. So we know that cities concentrate all forms of malnutrition. This is very worrisome. It was already worrisome before the pandemic, even more now. In cities, you see chronic hunger, you see acute hunger, but you also see obesity, you also see overweight, and you also see micronutrient deficiency. And all of these are increasing, and it's partially fueled by the pandemic itself. On the other hand, so we have the nutrition, also the climate change aspect. We know that the food system, world food system, is responsible for an important part of global greenhouse gas emissions. Somebody calculates around 26%. So obviously how our food is produced has an impact on climate change, but climate change has a massive impact also on how food is produced. And it has a massive impact, especially on the smallholder farmers. On the other hand, all the waste, that is food waste that is generated, that also has a massive footprint in terms of impact to the planet. Now, another FAO study has shown that around 3 billion people worldwide cannot afford healthy diets, just because it's more expensive to eat in a healthy way than in a kind of fast food or trash way. So cities themselves are a fundamental entry point for the transformation of food systems, and they have a leading role to play in sustainable innovation and sustainable food systems governance, also to transform the way in which food is produced and consumed, because in the end, the consumers have a really powerful role in determining which food they're going to eat, what they're going to buy, and therefore how that food is going to be also produced. We also need a better articulation between the city and the national governments for policies that are going to transform food systems. If our food systems are going to be more sustainable, more resilient, we need to better have that articulation between the city and local level and also the national policy level. We also think that a coherent approach at the national and urban food policies will influence consumer behavior, urban food environments, and positive effects throughout the whole of the food system. I believe that our action together is going to make a big difference in this process. This is the year of food systems. And as has been mentioned, we will have the Food System Summit. We are also going to have a pre-summit here in Rome, and we need to ensure that the voice of cities and local governments comes out very, very strong. As I said before, without this voice, we are not going to be able to reach our goal of having transformation of food systems. So it's a key opportunity. I'm sure that our work together is going to bring very strongly the voice of cities. And this is why we're so happy to be working together with all of you in the working group, of which we're going to talk later on in the session. I would like to thank very much UCLG and in particular Emilia for bringing us together. This is a very important step towards working together, speaking with a unified voice, making a difference, and also learning from good experiences like the one we heard just right now from Barcelona, the ones we're going to hear later on, including Valencia. There's a lot to learn from, there's a lot to share. And of course, from FAO, we can just let you know that we are going to be your partner in throughout this whole process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcela, for giving us hope about the role that our voices can actually play in that international policy-making process. We are patient and we are very determined. So we are going to make sure that we knock on the doors and that it is clear that for the municipal movement, the food is no longer an afterthought, that in the urban era, we want to play a different role. And as we are mandated in United Cities and local governments to develop this pact for the future, rethinking the relationship between people, nature, and government, we think that food is a very, very important part, a very important pillar of this new social contract that needs to be encapsulated in that pact for the future that is going to be determining our work in the coming years. And now I am really excited to introduce the next segment, because this is a little bit of a different approach. Is opening our minds, connecting the dots between different parts of our lives, but actually very, very, very relevant to every single thing that we do. I want you to pay attention to the next segment that is going to invite us to have a different, a little bit out of the box, I would say. So I am very delighted to introduce Matteo Lucchetti from the Orchestras of Transformation. That is a curatorial agency that was founded over a year ago and with whom we work closely during our process to develop the Rome Charter on cultural rights. And Marcelo is going to introduce colleagues from the cooking sections. I will let him do that. You will see how everything connects. Marcelo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you so much. And as you said, the Orchestra of Transformation was founded over a year ago, but from the experience of two art organizations. One is Visible, that has been researching socially engaged artistic practices that are trying to implement projects that change our society, transform our society from bottom up with an artistic vision. And with Locales, that is an organization that does the same thing, but in Rome, specifically in the context of Rome. Together, we kind of joined forces a year ago to really respond to the Rome Charter initiative and to create an agency that could really mediate, bridge artistic projects around the world that are trying to implement the transformation in their context, in their constituencies, and to really create new bridges with the cities. Specifically today, I'm super pleased to introduce one of the three projects we are curating for this first chapter of the Orchestra of Transformation, that is Cooking Section with the project Climavore. I will let them do the talk because they do it beautifully. And just to say one thing that I think it's very important to really have the perspective of artists in these processes, because they're really the ones that change the frames, the speeds and scales through which we perceive our reality. And it's in such moment, I think it's really important. And as before Marcela was saying, the cities are the entry point to change. I think really to create this bridge between artists and cities is really fundamental. So I let Alon and Daniel talk. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Emilia and UCLG, for having us here, and for Matteo for this introduction. We are Cooking Sections. I'm Alon.
And I'm Daniel.
And we're going to present today Climavore, a platform and a movement that we started 6 years ago. So Climavore is a platform and a movement that explores how we eat as humans change climates. Different from carnivore, omnivore, locavore, vegetarian, or even vegan, it's not so much the ingredients that define Climavore, but rather the infrastructure to regenerate damaged ecology.
Walking down the supermarket aisle, we are encountered by multiple seasons, and we consume raspberries, asparagus, or even salmon all year round. But more and more, what is affecting and defining our food landscapes, we believe, are new seasons of drought, of polluted oceans, or soil exhaustion.
Climavore works with communities, cultural institutions, towns, and cities to develop alternative and regenerative food infrastructures for the climate emergency. We will be presenting today how the project has responded to a season of fish farms of pollution on the Isle of Skye, Scotland, where we have been working since 2016. When we visited Skye for the first time, we heard about a house sparrow, a bird that had turned salmon. The bird had turned pink, peculiar, but perhaps not that surprising.
Skye is a home to 10,000 human residents, but also approximately 16 million salmon that are farmed in cylindrical open nets. And in farms, the absence of natural food would make salmon be gray, so they have to be fed artificial color to acquire the ideal salmon tone that people expect. So this salmon fat that you see in your screen is the tool that allows industrial farms to give salmon fish the different shades of salmon color.
Farm salmon are enclosed in pens with 100,000 to 200,000 fish. The feed pellets also contain antibiotics that escape through the holes in the nets with excrements of the fish. Fish excrements sink and blanket the seafloor, creating uninhabitable dead zones. These salmon farms now dot the coasts of Scotland, Iceland, Chile, Ireland, Canada, and Tasmania. But they also affect the waters and lands of other countries from South America to West Africa, where other feed ingredients like soybeans or anchovies come from.
Parasites thrive on salmon bodies when they are crammed into the confines of the pen. And these sea lice cause lesions, stress, and in some cases kill entire populations. So salmon is a landscape consuming practice that is actually changing and degrading once again our relationship to the ocean.
Now, different from intensive salmon farming that produce an excess of nitrogen, other creatures filter the water by breathing, like oysters, mussels, and seaweeds. One oyster can filter up to 120 liters of seawater per day, and they all provide an incredible source of easy access protein without any need for feed or fertilizers. Despite many of these ingredients being very familiar, we have lost connection to them, and even though they have been abandoned for centuries.
So oysters, for example, were an abandoned and important cheap food source in the UK. But after depleting naturally occurring oyster beds, it was discovered that they could grow on tables. And on the Isle of Skye, our oyster table functions as a dining table that opens the discussion around a transition into other forms of aquaculture.
So every day at high tide, the structure allows its oysters, mussels, and seaweed to breathe, and by that, filter the water. At low tide, the oyster table emerges above the sea and functions as a dining table, where we placed some humans. Now, over breakfast, lunch, or dinner, performative meals feature a series of Climavore ingredients, where workshops with fishermen, politicians, residents, and scientists have discussed an alternative and prospective food culture for the islands.
And what is important for us also is to look back at the role of restaurants, which is a very important space for Climavore. And as a modern facility, the restaurant emerged in Paris under the name Bouillon Restaurant, which was a soup to restore the body. And soon it became very popular, and the name actually stayed to refer to the restaurant as we know it today. So what Climavore advocates for is that in the climate emergency, also the restaurant is not only a place to restore the human body with a soup, but also a place to restore ecologies and environments. And to do that, also we have created a network of restaurants that have established a menu without farmed salmon and replacing it with Climavore dishes.
As part of that, and for our exhibition that is currently on view at Tate Britain in London, the National Museum, with millions of visitors per year, has removed some farmed salmon off its menu across all its cafes and restaurants and introduced a Climavore menu instead. This ongoing project is expanding into other restaurants and cultural institutions worldwide, and more cities can join the movement.
In order to rethink coastal environmental heritage, Climavore works on 3 lines, which are learning, growing, and building. As part of the educational program, we have been also running apprenticeships with local teenagers to reconnect with the coast and become Climaphore cooks using some of these alternative ingredients.
Climaphore is also developing low-cost techniques for an intertidal polyculture farm, cultivating both foods and habitat as a replicable and scalable model to promote coastal food security.
And from the waste, oyster and mussel shells collected from the restaurants, we're also investigating new material composites to reduce the amount of food waste going to landfill and develop new building materials as an alternative economy also for the island.
So how cities can become Climaphore? We are inviting cities all over the world to become Climaphore and join our platform and movement, to build better communities and food cultures by supporting the cultivation of food as ecological habitats and developing links between art and cultural spaces, restaurants and industry and education. Climaphore then can help us determine what we eat as humans change the climate.
Thank you very much. You really rock. And I will do my very best to make sure that at least United Cities and local governments also becomes Climaphore. Let us see how we get to that. But I think a lot of the commitments that also the Barcelona challenges are presenting and the good food declaration promoted by local government networks will be very critical to this development. We need your thinking though. We need your artistic vein. We need your boldness and vision to help us make a true shift. So count on us to contribute to more Climaphores. And I advise you to look at that website. It's really, really interesting. Thank you very much for inspiring our future conversations today. And don't go too far away because we will be knocking on your doors more and more, I'm certain. And who knows, maybe inspire new artistic performances and new parts of that work that you do. And so now I am going back to our colleagues from Barcelona, to Amaranta Herrero, the Strategic Coordinator of Barcelona World Capital of Sustainable Food. You see, we are very well accompanied, Amaranta, and you have an excellent panel in your hands. Good luck with the facilitation, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Emilia. Thank you all for being here. I'm very glad I made it to this meeting. As some previous speakers have already mentioned, in order to tackle the climate emergency, is indispensable to transform our food systems, the way we grow food, we eat, and we produce waste in this planet. Especially because from farm to fork and waste, the whole food system is responsible of in between 21 and 37 of the greenhouse gas emissions, according to the IPCC. We also know, as also Emilia has been mentioning, how important are subnational levels of governance, such as cities and regions, to achieve this change as key actors in this transformation. This transformation won't happen without these key actors, and also because 70% of our food, the food is produced in the world, is consumed in cities. So they have a lot to say and a lot to do. So in this panel that is starting, the goal is to share an inspiring conversation and learn from what people are doing in their cities. And the first speaker is Cristina Sosan, the advisor food policy is an advisor food policy office from the city of Milan. Hello, Cristina.
Hello everybody. Thank you very much for this invitation. And thank you also on behalf of Andrea Magarini, the food policy coordinator of Milan. Thanks for all the inspiring presentations that have been done before. And I guess I won't be so inspiring, but I will just try to give a short overview of the experience of Milan and with all the works that actually we do together with all the other cities or many other cities that are here today. So as probably some of you may know, the Milan has started the process of toward a more sustainable food system in 2015 with the great opportunity of the Universal Exposition, Expo 2015. Together with the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact and the approval and the signing of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, the city decided to concentrate on how to work on the local food system. So we set up 5 priorities. Some of them have already been mentioned before. So the fight against food waste, education on food, sustainability of the food system, research and innovation on food, and access to food, ensuring access to food. So in these 5 years, actually in 2020, the food policy has a birthday, the 5th birthday, and we were able actually to monitor the impacts, some of the impacts of the actions that we implemented, particularly in terms of food waste. We were able to open 2 food waste hubs, and 2 more hubs will be open by the mid of this year, where food surpluses is collected and then donated to families in need. And this practice, for instance, was very, very important in the last period of the COVID-19, because actually it was a practice that allowed the city of Milan to respond to the crisis immediately in order to give the opportunity to people to access food through the network that has been created with the association, with the private and the public entities and bodies. So that was, for instance, one of the innovation created. We didn't expect that was important for a situation like that, but it was, and it was very important to work with the network and with the stakeholders that we have involved during these 5 years. So in relation to what Marcela and Emilia said before, the creation of network, the creation of the participation of the various stakeholders at city level is fundamental in order to provide also immediate response to some situations such as the pandemic crisis. Another important result was the one on school canteens. With the World Research Institute, we were able to monitor the impact of the changes that we introduced with the municipal agencies for school canteen in Milan to monitor the changes that occurred in the menus. So we did some important changes in cutting meat and introducing more legumes and more vegetables and more fruits, or changing the menu, giving the fruits as a middle break in the middle morning instead of at the end of the meal, toward a better use of food. So in order to avoid food waste, but also in order to educate and to introduce a better diet. And we monitor new measures that we reduce by the 20% the CO2 equivalent emissions in 5 years. So it was a great result. These are some of the main focus that I wanted to share with you. Another factor and an important result is also the cooperation with cities that we implemented across the years, together with the European cities member of Eurocities or the cities member of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, and the sharing of experiences. For instance, I repeat again last year, because the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact did the special edition of the Pact Awards, where more than 100 practices were sent in order to share how cities fight the problem of accessing food during the pandemic. And it was a great experience. And today we have like a huge amount of experiences that we can share on cities and on how cities tackle the issues of food waste and also of food access during this period. So there are many things that we can share, of course, and many of you knows our experience. And I think I just wanted to give you a brief overview of our experience. And for the future, we will continue to work on that toward the sustainability of the food system with the short supply chain, with the sustainable and healthy diets, and also on research and innovation, working on pilot studies and pilot experiences. So I'm looking forward to meet you in Barcelona for the next MUFPP meeting and all the challenges, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Cristina. I'm looking forward to seeing you too in Barcelona. Our next speaker is María Eugenia Torres, Director of Equity and Gender from the Azuay province. Hello, María. María.
Hola, buenos días.
Hola.
Se escucha bien, ¿verdad? Buenos días.
Hola, María.
Bueno, perdón, buenos días por acá en esta parte del mundo, en esta parte en Ecuador, ¿no? En América Latina, pues un fuerte saludo, buena tarde por allá, por otros lugares del mundo en el que nos están mirando. Muchas gracias a CGLU. Y pues sí, abordar también la temática desde la realidad local, desde nuestra realidad en Ecuador, pero que en conjunto nos suma un cúmulo de inconvenientes que hemos ido encontrando en el camino, inconvenientes además de nivel y de impacto mundial, como es el de la pandemia, ¿no? Pues, y que cruza completamente a los centros o a los sistemas agroalimentarios. Es conocido ya que los centros de producción agroindustrial se han convertido en sitios de potenciación de estos superpatógenos. Tenemos ya claras y anteriores muestras, ¿no? Tal vez con un margen de impacto menor, pero sin duda también fuerte y que ha implicado un problema para el mundo, como la gripe porcina, fiebre aftosa, hepatitis, entre otros virus de este tipo. Hay los intereses del gran capital, pues no hay como desconocer, que generan percepciones y que difunden y proporcionan la idea de que los patógenos provienen de la producción de poblaciones indígenas, campesinas, a causa de prácticas culturales poco higiénicas, entre comillas, o atrasadas, ¿no? Mientras que importantes estudios demuestran que la agroindustria potencia y expande los patógenos de una manera acelerada, llegando al más lejano lugar y cada vez en menor tiempo. Cuanto más largo sea el encadenamiento agroindustrial, cuanto mayor sea la deforestación ligada a esta actividad, más diversos y extraños serán los patógenos zoonóticos, aquellos que se transmiten de animales a humanos, ¿no? Y que entran en la cadena alimentaria. Por tanto, mientras mantengamos nuestros bosques nativos, nuestras semillas criollas, nuestras semillas nativas, mientras cuidemos la fertilidad de la tierra y sostengamos la diversidad de las economías, lograremos evitar la dispersión de estas plagas mortales. Es urgente sostener la diversidad en los animales de crianza, que las crianzas sigan siendo sobre todo en la tierra, en espacios lo más naturales y amplios posibles. Es necesario mantener la selección natural de todas las especies domesticadas y cultivadas. Y por ahí alguien mencionaba, y estoy de acuerdo, también la disminución de la producción o el consumo de carne, ¿no? Que es importante también en términos de optimización de energía. Es por ello que desde acá, desde este gobierno local, que además está rodeado y tiene un fuerte apoyo, un fuerte impulso, digamos, por las experiencias en la organización social en Azuay y en el país, sobre todo experiencias agroecológicas. Es así que reconocemos la fuerza científica y política en la consigna de la vía campesina sobre la agroecología, ¿no? Aquella que se dice puede alimentar el mundo y enfriar al planeta. para el gobierno provincial de la SUAY, aquí en Ecuador, es además de mandatorio, la soberanía alimentaria, pues la misma Constitución la recoge en el artículo 281, en la que dice que la soberanía alimentaria constituye un objetivo estratégico y una obligación del Estado para garantizar que las personas, comunidades, pueblos y nacionalidades alcancen la autosuficiencia de alimentos sanos y culturalmente apropiados de forma permanente. También bajando y a las leyes orgánicas también recogen y reconocen la soberanía alimentaria como una estrategia y un deber del Estado, el impulso nacional sobre ella, ¿no? Además de la Declaración de la Vía Campesina en 2007 sobre la provisión de alimentos suficientes, sanos, nutritivos, localmente culturales y apropiados para todas las personas, ¿no? Como gobierno local y digamos como personas, administradores públicos, gestores de la política pública y quienes estamos en diálogo permanente con la sociedad para realizar acciones en favor de. Es importantísimo reconocer estos reconocimientos políticos y sociales de la soberanía alimentaria y de los sistemas agroalimentarios desde la producción, y hay un asunto que también nos compete y que nos lleva a hacer algunos esfuerzos, es el hecho también de la provisión, el transporte, la distribución y el acceso a estos productos, a estos alimentos de calidad. El COVID, el confinamiento nos dejó varios aprendizajes. Quienes movilizaron y quienes distribuyeron a más puntos, a varios puntos en las zonas urbanas, los alimentos, fueron los sectores campesinos, los sectores de producción de alimentos básicos y necesarios, que aún con toda la problemática y los conflictos en la distribución, en el traslado de los alimentos hacia los puntos de expendio y las zonas urbanas sobre todo, aún con esos conflictos, alcanzaron a llegar y pues pusieron cada vez más accesibles en momentos de confinamiento. Pues ya no eran los supermercados los focos de atención, sino más bien aquellos mercados pequeñitos, aquellas tiendas pequeñitas, más cercanas a tu casa, más localizadas en tu barrio. Eso es un aprendizaje también muy fuerte, muy pleno que nos dejó, que nos va dejando, pues no hemos pasado todavía esta pandemia de la COVID-19. Entonces, algunas citas para nuestras estrategias son el transporte, la distribución y los espacios de expendio, mercados, tiendas, restaurantes también. Hay experiencias de restaurantes importantes que recogen y que basan la transformación de sus alimentos en base de los productos campesinos, sobre todo productos agroecológicos, y pues allí es lo que son espacios en los que nosotras estamos denominando por acá estos diálogos campo-ciudad, ¿no? Esos acercamientos y además esos lazos de solidaridad que apoyan desde un pensamiento colectivo a encontrar soluciones colectivas, soluciones para el colectivo. Estamos enfocadas en eso y es necesario también e imprescindible decir que no vamos a salir de esto, no vamos a avanzar si es que no miramos otras condiciones que nos imposibilitan la transformación y el avance, como son las condiciones sociales. El hecho, por ejemplo, y sobre todo aquí en Azuay, es una realidad en América Latina, en muchos países, sobre todo de las regiones y partes del sur del mundo, y, ¿por qué no? Totalmente aquí en esta provincia, en Azuay, el hecho de que la violencia imposibilita o interrumpe mucho nuestro trabajo, nuestro desarrollo y la posibilidad de crear accesos y un espacio mejor. Es la violencia de género contra las mujeres, es un tema también a la que estamos dedicadas por temas de migración, son espacios campesinos de producción, espacios campesinos liderados fundamentalmente por mujeres. Entonces, una de las cuestiones que tenemos que trabajar y que la estamos trabajando, estamos con toda la decisión política y administrativa, es el trabajo por mejorar estas condiciones y por salir de la violencia de género contra las mujeres. Eso, decirles a ustedes muchas gracias y un fuerte abrazo desde acá.
Muchas gracias, María. El siguiente, the next speaker is Abdayem, Cooperation Advisor from Nouakchott, from the Nouakchott region. Welcome.
Donc, merci beaucoup. Oui, oui, bonjour. Vous m'entendez?
Bonjour, oui.
Merci beaucoup pour cette invitation à cet événement, cet important événement. Bien sûr, moi, j'ai essayé de résumer, de parler de l'expérience de la région de Nouakchott. Je suis accompagné par un collègue qui est chargé d'un projet Nourrir Verdir, un projet de la sécurité alimentaire, un projet de l'autosuffisance alimentaire, un projet pilote qui a été établi par la région de Nouakchott. Et bien sûr, aussi, on va parler, c'est-à-dire qu'on a tiré des leçons, comme tout le monde, des leçons de Covid, que l'importance de l'autosuffisance en termes de sécurité alimentaire, et surtout que notre pays base essentiellement sur l'importation des produits alimentaires d'une manière générale. Donc, ce projet considéré comme une ambition et un projet pilote qui va résoudre énormément de problèmes de la région de Nouakchott, en commençant par la sécurité alimentaire, par la fourniture des produits alimentaires, que ce soit des légumes, que ce soit des matières de base, de la sécurité alimentaire, et aussi, bien sûr, va contribuer à l'employabilité de jeunes aussi au niveau de la région. Bien sûr, il a aussi un rôle très important sur le changement climatique, c'est-à-dire qui rentre dans notre vision et notre stratégie pour verdir la région de Nouakchott. Donc, bon, je donne la parole à mon collègue pour c'est-à-dire nous donner plus d'informations sur ce projet. Après, on va conclure sur des points de généralité sur les ambitions de la région de Nouakchott.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Donc, je suis le chef de projet. On parlait à Ben, m'a invité de s'associer à lui pour parler de ça. Le projet, c'est donc nommé Nourrir Verdir de Nouakchott, consiste à créer des périmètres de maraîchage aux alentours de la ville, à PK17, 17 km à l'est et à 45 aussi, donc des périmètres de. Donc, le contexte global, c'est l'autosuffisance alimentaire, comme vient de le dire. Il y a aussi l'insertion professionnelle des jeunes et contribuer aussi à l'alimentation saine. Donc, en Mauritanie, on ne produit pas localement beaucoup de fruits et légumes. Donc, on importe du Maroc et suite au blocage qui a eu lieu il y a quelques semaines. Donc, l'importation a été lourdement affectée. Et puis, il y avait ce qu'on appelait ici la crise des tomates. En fait, on n'avait pas à trouver dans le marché les tomates. Déjà, il n'y avait pas. Et en conséquence, le prix a monté significativement. Donc, ce qui a poussé la région, la présidente et les élus locaux de penser à contribuer à l'autosuffisance alimentaire de la région, insérer davantage de jeunes, ça crée de l'activité, de l'emploi. Et donc pour l'instant, on parle de 10 hectares dans le cadre des projets avec le partenaire de la coopération espagnole, dans le cadre de la convention comme SSA phase 3, que j'ai l'honneur de diriger. Et donc voilà, on parle dans des périmètres pilotes, 10 hectares chacun, sachant qu'on a les parcelles. Nous sommes confrontés à des contraintes sur les habitats développés, surtout l'accès à l'eau. À mon avis, c'est un élément déterminant. Donc, la volonté est là, le foncier est là, mais il y a des contraintes techniques, notamment l'accès à l'eau, et nous sommes en train de travailler comment combler à ces défauts, soit réutiliser des eaux de rinçage, des filtres de réservoirs d'eau potable. On ramène l'eau du fleuve Sénégal 200 km. On achemine, c'est des conduites de taille. Une fois arrivé en PK17, donc là, il y a le réservoir qui va faire la distribution au niveau de la ville. On a des filtres pour traiter un petit peu l'eau. Et c'est l'eau utilisée, donc l'eau de rinçage de ces puits qui sera réutilisée en agriculture avec le risque de colmater des systèmes d'irrigation. On travaille aussi sur notre approche qui consistait à dessaler l'eau de la nappe, qui déjà, on a une nappe souterraine sur Nouakchott. On ne connaît pas trop le niveau de salinité, est-ce que c'est salé au-delà de 10 grammes ou saumâtre entre 1 et 10, la salinité. Donc, on a deux options d'autres alternatives de faire de forage in situ et faire des petites unités de dessalement pour arriver à une eau qui permet d'irriguer correctement. Mais ça, c'est encore, ça en passe vraiment d'expérimentation parce que c'est des projets pilotes. Mais en tout cas, l'idée est là et dans un avenir ambitieux des Abdeldaïm, on va réutiliser les eaux usées carrément des stations d'épuration qui sont en cours de réflexion au niveau de l'État. En gros, on travaille sur ces permetteurs d'irrigation au niveau de la ville.
Donc, bien sûr, au niveau de la région, c'est-à-dire nous sommes engagés dans l'ensemble des accords internationaux sur le changement climatique. Et nous basons aussi sur la coopération et l'échange des expériences entre les autres villes. Bien sûr que notre expérience est une expérience nouvelle, une expérience jeune. Donc, nous basons sur l'échange des expériences. Nous comptons sur ce genre d'événements pour qu'on saisisse l'occasion pour, c'est-à-dire améliorer notre expérience. Donc voilà, bien sûr que le Covid-19 a donné des leçons qu'on basait sur nos ressources personnelles, sur l'autosuffisance alimentaire. Donc voilà, de manière générale, nous avons cette expérience qui contribue aussi sur la préservation et la résilience de la ville de Nouakchott aussi, du côté climatique. Donc ça fait partie c'est-à-dire c'est un projet pilote qui fait partie d'un grand projet. Bien sûr, nous avons des études qui sont en cours pour élargir l'expérience et pour, bien sûr, les faire exporter au niveau des autres régions de la Mauritanie. Donc, merci beaucoup.
Thank you to you, Abdayem. Indeed, learning from each other is crucial to create or to transform the food system, and also pilot projects are also important to see opportunities and threats that they can offer. So our next speaker is, I am very sorry if I pronounce this incorrectly, Elbakali Abdelali, Coordinator of Environment and Cooperation from Chefchaouen.
Bonjour à tout le monde, salam alaikum. Je représente la commune de Chefchaouen. Je vais remplacer Monsieur Elbakali, désolé, à la dernière minute. Je vais partager avec vous l'expérience de la ville de Chefchaouen concernant le système alimentaire et le changement climatique. Merci d'abord pour l'invitation si je l'ai eue. Je vais donner un grand résumé de ce que possède la ville de Chefchaouen concernant le système alimentaire, et ceci via un petit récap de ce que je vais dire durant le travail qu'on a entamé durant 10 ans ou plus même, depuis 2010. Alors, je vais juste donner un bref descriptif de la ville de Chefchaouen. La ville de Chefchaouen est située au nord-ouest du Maroc. La population de la ville s'élève à 42 786 habitants, selon le recensement de 2014. Et en 2010, notre ville a été reconnue comme communauté emblématique de la diète méditerranéenne, patrimoine culturel immatériel de l'UNESCO, avec les villes de Soria en Espagne, Cilento en Italie et Coron en Grèce. Depuis 2013, d'autres territoires du bassin méditerranéen ont également reçu cette distinction prestigieuse, telles que les villes de Tavira au Portugal, d'Agros à Chypre et les îles de Brac et Var en Croatie. Cette reconnaissance a permis à notre municipalité de prendre conscience de la richesse de son patrimoine immatériel à savoir le mode de vie typique de Chefchaouen et l'ensemble des connaissances, des traditions et coutumes qui perdurent dans la culture locale depuis des siècles. Sachant bien que la ville de Chefchaouen a été fondée en 1471. En dépit de sa large médiatisation suite à la reconnaissance de cette récente inscription en 2010 sur la liste du patrimoine culturel immatériel de l'humanité par l'UNESCO, le concept de la diète méditerranéenne est loin d'être une nouveauté. En effet, sa reconnaissance en tant que régime alimentaire particulier remonte aux années 60 du siècle dernier, où les études épidémiologiques avaient montré que les incidences bénéfiques de ce régime pour la santé, notamment sa contribution à une meilleure protection contre certaines pathologies, telles que les maladies cardiovasculaires. Je vais entrer directement sur le concept. Donc, la diète en tant que régime alimentaire est le paysage bioculturel. Ainsi, elle fait ressortir l'importance de l'agrobiodiversité et de l'agriculture traditionnelle. C'est un mélange entre eux et sur les spécificités des systèmes d'alimentation et de production. La diète, en intégrant le paysage agricole et les agroécosystèmes, prend alors toute sa signification en tant qu'héritage culturel à travers son ancrage à des territoires, des hommes et des cultures. Il est aussi à signaler que la ville de Chefchaouen est connue par sa ruralité, qui est une caractéristique importante de son arrière-pays. Dans ce cas, on pense qu'il faut éviter le schéma général de l'opposition du rural à l'urbain, qui se base sur la notion de citadinité, pour, au contraire, les concilier comme des espaces non cloisonnés qui s'interpénètrent. Il convient de noter que la production agricole est produite essentiellement dans le milieu rural, et celle réalisée au niveau de la ville de Chefchaouen est supposée négligeable. La population de Chefchaouen, ce qu'on nomme entre parenthèses les Chaounis, la population de Chefchaouen a développé des habitudes alimentaires particulières qui dépendent de nombreux facteurs, le climat, l'agriculture, le niveau économique, les acquis du passé historique, la culture et la religion. Ceci conditionnait, entre autres, sa culture gastronomique qui se trouve aussi liée aux attributs de plusieurs facteurs, modes d'appropriation et d'exploitation de la terre, les pratiques de la reproduction et la sélection des espèces végétales, les techniques de rotation des cultures, la multiplication, la gestion et l'exploitation des ressources animales et le choix, la cohérence et l'assaisonnement des ingrédients, les modalités, l'élaboration et ensuite la préparation pour donner des repas prêts mais très distinctifs qui portent le cachet de Chefchaouen. Pour cela, la ville de Chefchaouen est réputée par la particularité de pratique et savoir-faire en matière de valorisation des produits de terroir surtout, et joue un rôle d'avant-garde dans la promotion des produits de terroir à travers plusieurs initiatives comme la création d'un marché local nommé Souk Beldi par les municipalités pour encourager la commercialisation des produits locaux, c'est-à-dire produits à Chefchaouen et vendus à Chefchaouen, mais sans additifs, ce sont des produits vraiment bio. En tant que système alimentaire, le régime méditerranéen est un système vivant qui continue encore aujourd'hui d'être modifié et d'évalué. C'est une chose à la fois nécessaire et irrémédiable, mais les changements drastiques subis comme conséquence de la mondialisation d'une ampleur sans précédent ont pour résultat la possibilité de faire balancer définitivement le modèle jusqu'à le convertir en quelque chose de tellement différent qu'il en deviendrait méconnaissable ou peu estimable. C'est pour cette raison qu'il est particulièrement intéressant d'étudier ce modèle à la lumière de nombreuses perspectives qui offrent une base solide à sauvegarder au-delà de toutes les caractéristiques habituellement modifiables et donc également moins pertinentes par rapport à leur conservation. Je voulais juste rajouter une petite phrase, c'est que les connaissances et l'appropriation du système de production et de produits en soi permettent la transmission de cette information du producteur au consommateur. Selon la communication du directeur de la FAO lors de la Journée mondiale de l'alimentation en 2013, la santé des gens dépend des systèmes alimentaires sains. Je vais juste finir par une phrase. le régime alimentaire en tant que patrimoine culturel immatériel a atteint cette dimension sous un prisme holistique qui combine en effet les aspects de la santé de l'homme en tant que régime de santé, les aspects socio-économiques, environnementaux et historico-culturels qui impliquent à leur tour tous les secteurs productifs, de transformation, logistiques, commerciaux, évidemment les administrations compétentes. Nous aspirons donc à poursuivre nos efforts suite à la préservation et la divulgation des vertus de notre mode de vie et nous espérons que ceci a été dit, suscitera un grand intérêt auprès des personnes qui sont à l'écoute maintenant. Merci à vous.
Thank you very much, Dalila, for remarking the cross-cutting dimension of food and the healthy diet as a biocultural element. Our next speaker, sorry, I lost the here. Our next speaker is César Carrillo, Director of Rural Economy and Supply of the Secretariat of Economic Development in Bogotá. Hola, César.
Thank you, Maranta. Thank you very much for this opportunity. For Bogotá, it's very important to be here in this scenario to share our thoughts. I would like to do this in Spanish, if it's okay. Un poco la pregunta orientadora que nos dan de cómo se está transformando el papel de los sistemas alimentarios post pandemia, pues parte de una afirmación que es válida y que compartimos, y es que los sistemas alimentarios se están transformando. O sea, la pandemia llegó para cambiar absolutamente todo. Es como una gran reflexión universal, ¿cierto? Donde pues pasa por cosas muy profundas de cuánto tiempo estamos en la tierra, a qué venimos, nos da cuenta de que la vida es finita, etcétera. Y esos pensamientos que parecen accesorios son supremamente importantes porque llevaron a la humanidad a tener conciencia de dónde viene la comida, cómo viene, quién la produce. Ese tipo de cuestionamientos no, por lo menos acá en Colombia, en Bogotá, no son del día a día. El tema de abastecimiento alimentario no era una prioridad. Pero yo creo que cuando arranca la pandemia, lo primero que pensamos todos es, oiga, la comida no sale en el supermercado, como que no es de generación espontánea en el supermercado. En casos como el bogotano, tuvimos riesgos inclusive de cerrar las grandes centrales de abastos. Y entonces la gente salía corriendo a llenar su nevera y sus alacenas con comida porque por primera vez se estaba viendo un riesgo real de que no hubiese comida. Y esa conciencia universal, esa conciencia, yo pienso que hay que aprovecharla desde el tema de los sistemas alimentarios, porque todas las acciones demandan una emoción previa para que cojan tracción. Entonces, cuando cualquier consumidor dice, oiga, venga, es que nutrirme es absolutamente importante para mi salud. Y todos sabemos la hipocresía mundial en que vive el planeta, en que los sistemas de salud están colapsados precisamente por el fomento de la comida chatarra, de las bebidas azucaradas, del alcohol. Esa es una gran hipocresía general porque todos sabemos que si quisiéramos tener una población saludable, no habrían esas grandes campañas publicitarias de esta comida que nos enferma y que hace que pues no tengamos buena salud. Pero el solo hecho, nosotros acá en Colombia lo llamamos, o en Bogotá lo llamamos ciudadanía alimentaria. El concepto de tengo unos derechos y tengo unas obligaciones y empezar a que el ciudadano de a pie entienda qué come. Ahí estamos hablando de nutrición. ¿Cómo llega físicamente el producto? O sea, acá en Colombia, en Bogotá, tenemos productos que recorren 300 o 400 kilómetros para llegar al centro de la ciudad. Bogotá es una ciudad, región de 10 millones de habitantes, ¿cierto? Llega al centro de la ciudad y de ahí se distribuye a las pequeñas tiendas en los barrios de Bogotá. Entonces, cuando producto llega a consumidor final, ha tenido un proceso que hace, por ejemplo, que 1 de cada 3 toneladas de comida se pierda. Las pérdidas y desperdicios que tenemos por esas cadenas logísticas son absurdas y pues realmente, insisto, no era un tema prioritario ni para el gobierno, ni era un tema prioritario para la gente. Otro elemento fundamental, nos ha hecho pensar quién produce la comida. No es lo mismo hoy acá comprar en una gran superficie a un producto que pudo haber sido o importado o que pasó por 7, 8 intermediarios o porque, cuyo valor se ha incrementado 10 o 12 veces, pero el productor es el que menos ganó en esa cadena. No es lo mismo comprar ahí que comprarle, por ejemplo, en los pequeños mercados directamente al pequeño productor. Y eso ya otra vez, en el concepto de ciudadanía alimentaria, hoy juega un papel muy importante saber a quién le estoy comprando y saber que si compro aquí o si compro allá, tiene un efecto diferente en la cadena y los beneficiarios de esas utilidades son diferentes. Entonces, quiero decir que el primer elemento que entendemos acá es que se generó una gran conciencia sobre los sistemas alimentarios. Eso hace que el tema de abastecimiento alimentario ocupe un lugar hoy protagónico en la agenda pública. Así lo es en Bogotá y así lo es en Cundinamarca, que es la región que envuelve a Bogotá. Yo les quiero contar una cosa. En Bogotá y sus municipios aledaños, hoy, o mejor, no había un área metropolitana, lo cual es un absurdo, ¿no? Porque pues una ciudad de estas características, nosotros tendríamos que tener una región metropolitana hace 50 años, así como lo tiene Barcelona, así como lo tienen las grandes ciudades del mundo. Nosotros no. Y entonces eso hacía que la política pública de la región donde se produce el alimento no se hablara con la política pública del lugar donde se consume el alimento. Tamaño absurdo. El 96% del alimento que se consume en Bogotá es de fuera de Bogotá, es de la región. Entonces, tener las políticas públicas abiertas es un problema muy grave para el sistema alimentario y un poco la alcaldesa que hoy tenemos en Bogotá, la doctora Claudia López, y el gobernador de Cundinamarca, el doctor Nicolás García, tomaron la decisión de hacer la región metropolitana. Eso significa, y aquí hay que decirlo, es de las pocas regiones metropolitanas en el mundo que tienen el tema de abastecimiento dentro de su plan de acción. La mayoría de regiones o áreas metropolitanas se dedican a lo obvio, a movilidad, a servicios públicos, a seguridad, a ordenamiento territorial, pero pocas se dedican al tema de abastecimiento. Y si quisiera que quedara algo de esta charla, me gustaría mucho que fuese un mensaje frente a la necesidad de elevar a la jerarquía regional el tema del abastecimiento, sobre todo en aquellas ciudades que no son autosuficientes en su alimentación, que dependen de la región aledaña. En el caso bogotano, pues digamos que un poco lo que he dicho es que esa gran conciencia universal demanda o permite o genera un caldo de cultivo para generar acción, para generar decisiones que transformen. Eso dependerá en cada ciudad de su árbol de problemas. En el caso de Bogotá, y ahí voy a hablar un poquito del caso nuestro, el principal problema que teníamos o que tenemos es la alta concentración. ¿La alta concentración en qué? En productores, es decir, son pocos productores grandes los que producen el 80-90% de la comida. Eso es una alta concentración. Una alta concentración en las centrales de abastos en Bogotá. El 90% de la comida pasa por una gran central de abastos. Entonces, imagínense en el grueso de la pandemia, casi tuvimos que cerrar Corabastos. Eso hubiera sido gravísimo porque hubiéramos bloqueado el flujo de comida a toda la ciudad. Entonces, esa desconcentración de actores, de productores, es importante. Y un poco la política pública de nosotros en nuestro plan maestro de abastecimiento en los últimos meses está dirigida a fomentar la desconcentración, o sea, aprovechar la conciencia colectiva que se generó en esta gran reflexión universal de la pandemia para aumentar la desconcentración. Entonces, por ejemplo, todas las estrategias de circuitos cortos, nosotros aquí llamamos los mercados campesinos, que es traer los pequeños productores a la ciudad, los small farms, traerlos a la ciudad, digamos que eran como un modelo muy simbólico, muy bonito, pero no dejaba de ser muy poco alcance y para unos pequeños productores. Hoy, una de las decisiones importantes en el marco de la integración regional es aumentar el alcance y que el pequeño productor tenga la opción de poder vender su producto directamente a consumidor final, no a tanto intermediario, incrementando dramáticamente sus utilidades y disminuyendo el precio de compra para el consumidor final. Eso es mágico porque automáticamente arranca la producción del pequeño productor a ser viable nuevamente, fomenta que más pequeños productores vuelvan al campo, vuelvan a sus orígenes y eso, el efecto ambiental de eso, más una distribución inteligente de la producción, como lo decía, no llegar al corazón de la ciudad, sino a las entradas de Bogotá y distribuir capilarmente al interior de la ciudad, tiene unos efectos ambientales supremamente importantes. Entonces, desde el punto de vista táctico, los circuitos cortos, el otro elemento fundamental es las compras públicas. Bogotá compra miles de millones de pesos, muchos dólares, en comida y no se los compra a los pequeños productores. Entonces, lograr que el pequeño productor sea proveedor del Estado no es solamente decirlo, porque el Estado necesita unas calidades, unas cantidades, una oportunidad en sus insumos. Hay que lograr que eso sea posible. Entonces, las compras públicas y los gobiernos como grandes compradores de comida para sus programas escolares, para sus programas sociales, se convierten en un actor determinante. Esa decisión de los gobiernos de comprarle a pequeños productores se convierte también en una estrategia maravillosa para combatir el cambio climático. Entonces, yo, digamos, me había dicho que son 4 minutos, creo que me extendí un poco más. Quisiera cerrar con esto. La conciencia universal que se generó por la pandemia en torno a la importancia del alimento, hay que aprovecharla, esa emoción colectiva para generar acción. ¿Acción en qué? Dependiendo de los árboles de problema de cada ciudad. En el caso nuestro, la desconcentración, los circuitos cortos, las compras públicas y colocar al pequeño productor en el centro de la estrategia se convirtieron en nuestro plan de acción. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, César, por compartir la experiencia de Bogotá. Our next speaker is John Taylor, Chief Technical Advisor of the FAO Bangladesh.
Thank you very much, and I will make this very brief. Thank you, Amaranta, and thank you for inviting me. So I am here in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and I'll provide a little bit of a perspective from the subcontinent. This really should be the city officials and mayors, but I can describe a little bit of our work. FAO has what's called the Dhaka Food System Project. The city of Dhaka is a rapidly urbanizing megacity in the subcontinent. It's a city of over 20 million, and there's actually 3 different large cities within this sort of urban area. As you can probably imagine, climate change is a very, very urgent issue here, and the pandemic has hit very hard on the country. But addressing some of the kind of problems, I would say, you have issues, governance issues that undermine an effective coordinated response. City governments in this part of the world are not necessarily equipped with climate officers or food, they're with a mandate to really address those issues very clearly. And so I think, while cities do work on issues related to food, it's not very clear in their, let's say, job descriptions or in their particular mandates what they are to do. And so one thing that we've been working on is establishing a sort of food system governance platform. So for each of the 4 cities, we bring together different stakeholders, different national government departments, such as the Department of Agriculture Extension or Agriculture Marketing, the Food Safety Authority, together with city officials and a range of other interested stakeholders. They might be urban poor associations, different universities, maybe different kind of consumer associations, food associations, etc., and discuss regularly issues that are of concern to the city. So I think what I'd like to kind of get across here is that the approach is both, let's say, long-term, thinking about these larger scale issues, but balanced with very kind of immediate priorities that these different stakeholders are bringing up. And I think that the buy-in or the ownership, the desire to get involved and really bring food to the top of this public agenda as something that the city corporation can work on together with stakeholders is because there are a lot of these sort of small short-term issues that are being responded to and worked on. So these are things like food vendors or markets, perhaps. In this part of the world, food safety is a really important issue. So I think that the ability of this sort of urban food system governance platform to operate effectively is because people see a lot of shared interests and the ability to coordinate and reach out and work together. This is not something that actually happens with many other sectors, and I think we're lucky that food is something that brings people together so effectively. There is a plan to do such at the metropolitan level, but at the moment we're about a year into working on these city level sort of working groups that are actually sort of city city food councils, and I think that they are yielding a lot of very promising results, especially in response to the COVID pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for your inputs. Our last speaker of this panel will be Serafín Pazos Vidal, head of Brussels office from the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities.
Thank you, gracias Amaranta. Thank you. I'm aware of the time, so I'll be brief. First of all, well, COSLA is the National Association of Local Government from Scotland, so it's the Scottish UCLG member. Our largest local authority is Glasgow, and we were trying to get the leader of Glasgow City Council today, or the chief spokesperson of environment. I'm afraid we were trying, I mean, it was actually, they were like actively trying to reschedule the agenda up until this morning, but that was simply not possible. What I can do, however, is to highlight what Glasgow and Scotland is doing on this very quickly. In essence, I would like to quickly talk about the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration, which precisely highlight the role of local and regional governments in tackling not just climate justice, but actually the role of food plays in that. And it actually highlights the commitment that national governments undertake or are keen to undertake to tackle both the climate emergency and the food, as I say, the role that food plays on that. I will not get into much of the detail because my colleagues in Nourish Scotland will speak in the next slot, but just to say that this declaration, which is open for any other organization to join, and is in a way complements some of the other presentations and campaigns that we have had earlier today. There's a range of programs that are actually being developed in the context of COP26, the climate summit, and there's a number of activities prepared to achieve that. I would say that, and now speaking as well with a COSLA hat, that we hope to have a very strong local and government, local and regional government dimension in COP. That is more or less now clear. We hope that that will be actually make it into the actual, not just in the official program of the discussions, but actually in the actual outcome of the discussions, and recognize climate and the role of local government, including food and food policy in the final deal. Just to conclude, a couple of highlights of what we are doing in Scotland. Well, first, we have a mandatory legislation that expects that by 2025, only 5% of waste will be landfill. which is one of the biggest ones in worldwide. But that means there is a plan under legislation that means that food waste must be reduced by 1/3 by 2025. So it's like 1/3 in 5 years. It's very, very, that basically is 297,000 tons of food waste each year. Why is important local authorities? Because in Scotland, our local authorities, the 32 of them, are the ones that actually manage waste. There are other actors involved, but we are the ones that are actually responsible to ensure there is separate collection for food waste. And we're actually the ones that actually are in charge of the logistics of collecting waste, including providing for recycling, composting. And we still have a lot of things to do, for instance, work to do. At the moment, for instance, the average is about 40% of waste is recycled or composed. And considering the high ambition we are having, that's not good enough. But more widely, regardless of the role of local government, we need to think, as some people have said, in systems. Not just the production, the producers, the distributors, and the standards. Local authorities have a role key role as well, because we run the schools and children eat in the schools. So we have a role in prevention. The more so as in places like Scotland, there's still a cultural change to make to actually eat better. And that will also have an impact in the way of the quality and the amount of food that is produced and that is led to waste. So as I say, it's local authorities must be ambitious, as we are thinking in Scotland, and we encourage you to join the Glasgow Food Declaration. But we also need to work in partnership with others in order to achieve what it is a systemic challenge. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Serafin. I'm aware of the time, so I will summarize everything that has been said. I will try to do that my best in a minute. Different cities, as we have been listening, different cities and regions are engaging in a wide range of projects, pilot projects, initiatives, and strategies to transform their food systems. We've heard that learning lessons from COVID have become a driving force to reshape some elements of the food systems, such as promoting short food supplies, or promoting public procurement from giving more protagonism to small farmers. We've heard that in some regions, food is truly considered as a cross-cutting issue and a biocultural element, very important to connect the rural-urban environments and to reinforce this continuum. We've heard how some other regions have their goals based on food sovereignty and agroecology and are working towards those concepts. And also we've heard that other cities are establishing monitor systems to track the impact of the changes they are achieving and improving the coordinations among different actors. It's been a wonderful panel. Thank you very much. And our next facilitator of the next section, let me find the information, will be Kostas Stamoulis. He's the Senior Advisor of Food Systems and Food Security for the FAO. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amaranta. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. I'm delighted to be here, facilitate this top cast of speakers on the partnerships. I would like also to thank the UCLG for spearheading this event. I think that there is no doubt that food systems, in their immense complexity, the transformation of food systems cannot be carried out by one institution or individual, but by a partnership among institutions, individuals, sectors, etc. So before I start to speak, to give the floor to the panel, I would say a couple of words about the partnership that's formed. which is the Urban Food Systems Working Group, to which very in passing was referred to by previous speakers. This is an informal group who was created less than 1 year ago, which includes international city networks, academic and research institutions, civil society organizations, and UN agencies, about 23 institutions so far. The working group aims to empower cities to play a catalytic role in accelerating actions towards sustainable food systems. We promote a better understanding of the city's perspective and potential in the transformation process. And I think previous speakers talk about why cities have an enormous potential to lead the pathway towards sustainable transformation of food systems. The working group collectively represents decades of experience and initiatives related to urban food systems of cities of different sizes and typologies, from metropolitan to intermediary to small cities. We will also support the engagement of urban food system stakeholders in the UN Food System Summit and other global policy processes like climate COP26 and the Tokyo Nutrition for Growth Summit, which was the original event for which we tried to get the voice of the cities to be heard. And then other things came along the way. We foster coherence of urban messages and solutions across the various processes that the cities can play a catalytic role. So what is our roadmap? Very, very briefly. We facilitate the organization of independent dialogues within cities to raise awareness about the UN Food System Summit, map local stakeholders and relevant issues. We undertake consultations among cities and relevant stakeholders to discuss game-changing solutions that have been prioritized by the Food System Summit Secretariat and how they can be grounded at the local level. We can also recommend cities and other urban stakeholders to collaborate directly with action track leads to operationalize these ideas. We contribute to a city's food system global dialogue that is planned to be convened by the Food System Special Envoy to bring political attention to urban food systems, who could also ask as co-conveners of this. We're in the process of developing a white paper to underline the importance of urban food systems in the overall food systems transformation. We are, like all of you, and based, of course, on solid evidence, convinced that the urban space is a crucial entry point for transforming food systems to promote food security and improve nutrition, reduce food waste, and shaping demand patterns towards sustainable solutions. So after this little advertisement of the working group, which was part of my terms of reference in participating here, see Vicente laughing. After this little commercial, I would go straight to the speakers because of the time. I would ask everybody to keep within the time limit of 4 minutes as much as possible, so we have a little bit of time to summarize the results. So I'm starting with Grace Githiri. Please tell me if I massacred your last name. UN Habitat Associate Program Management Officer, you have the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Costas, and thank you so much to the organizers for inviting us. We are excited to be part of this series of Cities Are Listening. So today we are happy to be part of this topic on food systems and climate change. And of course, from UN Habitat perspective, we'll be talking through the lens of urban and territorial food governance and urban rural linkages. Of course, we've been hearing this from most of the previous speakers. It has been an interesting session where we've been learning about what other cities or about what other local and regional governments are doing. And I believe some of the issues that have come up as at the conclusion has been the relevance of urban rural linkages and linking of territories right from when Ms. Emilia opened the session. So, of course, partnerships are key when we're talking about food system transformation, and they should be included in food system governance. And we have had the example of Bangladesh, and I believe it's working out well. So in the context of what we are discussing today, the future we want for urbanization and for sustainable and resilient food systems, partnership between urban and rural communities, actors, agencies, and all that are very critical. And during last year, when COVID-19 pandemic broke, it showed us clearly how collaboration and coordination is key. And more so from the different webinars and materials that are prepared by different partners, we saw that in territories where there was a strong link between urban and rural areas, they were able to recover and respond quicker, more quickly than the rest, especially in the context of food, as again, we have heard from the various local and regional governments. Looking back to 5 years ago, we cannot forget about the SDGs negotiation, Milan Pact. We have Milan City today, and they were giving us the progress they have made. But there was also the new urban agenda, which was acknowledges the relevance of food systems and specifically urban and territorial food systems in the towards contributing to sustainable urbanization. And of course, some of the approaches recommended are policy, planning, legislation, governance. And again, I've had this from the local and regional governments. And looking at these global agendas, we see various recommendations and issues that are recommended. But we realize that local and regional governments are the implementers, again, as we have had from our previous interesting panelists. So at UN Habitat, just to mention, what have we been doing or what have been happening in the context of supporting local and regional governments to achieve functional and integrated urban and rural territories, and specifically in the area of food systems. So in 2015, we convened a multi-sectoral initiative of the Urban Rural Linkages Guiding Principles and Framework of Action, which was later launched in 2019, and we continue to implement through supporting various member states in capacity development, developing of possible materials for technical guidance, and so on and so forth. Apart from that, a resolution on urban rural linkages was adopted during the UN Habitat Assembly, of which member states, we are supporting member states at national and subnational levels. And you realize in all this, this was the outcome of different stakeholders working in different sectors, working in the urban-rural continuum in different perspectives. Apart from that, to note is the UN Habitat strategic plan currently, which is the foundation or the basis of what we're doing currently. Looking at the strategic plan, it highlights the relevance of the urban-rural continuum and the importance or significance of incorporating both the urban and rural, and specifically all actors in the urban-rural continuum. Specifically, of course, in response to the 11th Sustainable Development Goals, that the aim is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And of course, our subject for today concerning resilient and sustainable food systems part of this. So UN Habitat with partners, including FAO, and other international agencies, we are cooperating specifically with FAO in supporting member states or countries at national and subnational level in addressing urban and territorial food system. And it's mainly on policy planning again. And specifically currently, we are collaborating on an initiative called the Green Cities Initiative, which again fits very well in this particular dialogue that we have today. So apart from FAO, working with other partners at local and even global levels, we are supporting, again, local and regional and even national governments in interlinking policy, legislation, governance, planning agendas for food and nutrition, biodiversity, ecosystem restoration, and climate change resilience. And apart from this, again, just to mention what we are doing in for the Food System Summit. What Costas mentioned, we are glad and part and parcel of the Urban Food System Working Group, where again we are contributing and advocating for the role of local and regional governments in the food system. So in the Food System Summit, just to mention, UN Habitat is participating in different action tracks. Apart from the Urban Food System Working Group, we also are working on a technical governance working group, which again will also submit a white paper on the same. Of course, when talking about territorial governance, it's really relevant against to our dialogue today, because the idea is to say whatever is global should trickle down to local, and also local should trickle upwards to the global agendas. And this more is very relevant when you're talking about the food system. So just to finalize my my talk, I believe I've kept my time. So to manage the complex challenges at the intersections, as we have mentioned, of urban and rural areas, but also in the different sectors that come in when we're talking about these particular territories, UN Habitat and all of us must work closely with other agencies, actors, communities, disciplines in these particular territories, which includes the civil society and private sector. I've heard of academia being involved, which is really key. And we believe that as we look to emerging solutions over the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in this decade of action, the role of local and territorial actors is very key to achieving Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much, Pastor. Over.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Grace. I will quickly go to Vicente. Vicente Domingo, who's a dear friend. I know him for a long time. I haven't seen him for ages. It's a great pleasure to see you. I think most of you know the director of SEMAS. And without further praise, I will give you the floor. You have 4 minutes, Vicente. As much of a friend as you are, you get the same amount of time.
Thank you very, very much. First of all, thank you very much, Emilia, Costas, Marcela, Alvaro, and all of you for this wonderful meeting to talk about food every time, join people, connect people all around the world. It's amazing how even war enemies, when they are talking about food, they feel connected. That's wonderful. Okay, so in terms to talk about alliances about with food systems, I would say that the magic word in these terms is multilateralism. Multilateralism is the key of many things. I am not talking only in terms of public administrations or countries. Food systems demands many different topics linked to healthy and sustainable food systems. Here in SEMAS, we are trying to study as deep as possible this structure, and we find areas of knowledge like health, nutrition, childhood, tourism, neighborhoods, urban development, agriculture, livestock, fight against hunger, climate change, food waste, urban-rural linkages, food sovereignty, research, education, innovation, big data, mobility, logistics, gender, legislation, employment, public purchase or procurement, social economy, small farmer protection, local markets, social protection, migrations. No one leaves his country if he has nothing to eat for him or for his family. In the sense, people is dying day by day in Mediterranean, in Canarias, trying to cross to the south of North America. People leave his countries because they have nothing to. They haven't something close to a food system, not sustainable urban food system. No, something close to a food system, whatever the meaning. So, multilateralism is the key from at least from this point of time. as we are working here in CEMAS. It's amazing how I see in many different universities of research centers, like pharmacy faculty 2 days ago, last week, sorry, or journalists, communication, communication technologies, anthropology, architecture, economy, different points of view of knowledge. They are all converging about how can we help in order to improve food systems, not only to achieve the sustainable food systems, how can we improve that? It shows that many different actors are playing a very important role in this scenario. So it's great to see how many different stakeholders or private sectors of universities or NGOs or civil society. This is a key point in order to rethink what have we done until today and how can we improve all systems, because all these areas of knowledge are interlinked between them and they interact between themselves. So I try to be brief, but my question in this table today is multilateralism, but not in order to interact between countries or cities, as before the wonderful Cesar from Bogota, how Claudia Lopez has created a new metropolitan area, in the sense it's so important to link livelihood spaces with another livelihood spaces, with another spaces, with human spaces, with urban spaces, with rural spaces, with political spaces, with social spaces, all those many different and wonderful spaces are condemned to be in touch between themselves. Those are my words. I hope you enjoyed it, and of course we are open to all of you in order to give one more step, a giant leap in order to realize this wonderful achievement. Thank you very much, Costas, and I love you.
Me too. Thank you, Vicente. I will come to Barcelona and an invitee of yours, and I will give you my comments and reactions live. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Your talk. Let me go to Maite Rodriguez, Women and Habitat Latin America and Caribbean Network. Maite, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. So happy to be here again. I'm always learning a lot in these kind of events. Thank you very much, Emilia, and all the community from USLG that will going and advancing in these kind of topics. I'm going to turn and switch to Spanish because it's my language. So, quería decir entonces que la Red Mujer y Hábitat de América Latina y Caribe.
Everybody knows that there is an interpretation facility, right? Yeah. You know how to activate it. Good.
Yes.
Maite, please, sorry for interrupting you.
No worries, Costas, no worries. So, hablaba entonces que la Red Mujer y Hábitat de América Latina y Caribe vino trabajando con todo el tema de COVID-19 en diferentes espacios y en diferentes ámbitos de actuación. Me da mucho gusto porque casi que al mes que se declara la pandemia, nosotras ya estábamos trabajando en un foro regional para plantear que, bueno, primero que nada, las desigualdades que esta pandemia había planteado y había puesto pues, de manifiesto. Luego también de quedarnos en desigualdad, pues una dice, pues sí, ¿verdad? Pues hay que plantearlas, pero también era importante mencionar las oportunidades que podríamos encontrar en medio de todo este proceso que nos tocó vivir, ¿verdad? Y también, pues, qué planteamiento de políticas públicas tenemos y podíamos hacer. Y el tema más importante, me parece, era incidir en las agendas locales y regionales. Y nacionales, por supuesto. Nosotras teníamos en ese momento un proceso ya en marcha sobre el tema de los derechos de las mujeres a las ciudades, muy general. Y a raíz de la pandemia empezamos a ver cuál fue en cada contexto el tema que más se había pues afectado para las mujeres y sus derechos a la ciudad. Voy a mencionar fácilmente que en Bogotá fue la migración de las mujeres indígenas a las ciudades. En El Salvador fue todo el tema municipalista, ¿verdad? Que las mujeres dijeron, bueno, es la oportunidad para que planteemos diferentes políticas. En Chile fue todo el tema de la nueva constituyente y bueno, ahorita tenemos que plantear. En Argentina fue todo el tema barrial, ¿verdad? Que estaba pues en ese momento muy, pues digamos, precaria la participación de las mujeres. Y en Guatemala, donde yo estoy, ahora precisamente estoy en ese lugar, estoy en el nororiente de la ciudad, muy cerca del Caribe guatemalteco. Aquí entendimos que el tema que más se afectó fue el tema de la seguridad y el acceso a alimentos. De esa cuenta, planteamos entonces un nuevo derecho desde las mujeres a la ciudad, y era el derecho a los sistemas alimentarios. En ese sentido, planteamos y estuvimos planteando pues, que hay escenarios complejos. Por ejemplo, acá, además de pandemia, también tuvimos los huracanes, hablando del efecto climático, los huracanes ETA e IOTA. Con esto ustedes se podrán imaginar toda la pérdida de producción. El compañero de Bogotá me gustó mucho que habló de cómo estaba el abastecimiento. Bueno, antes de llegar al abastecimiento a estas zonas, aquí todo llega por agua, donde estoy ahora, por eso he tenido la cámara un poco cerrada porque o si no hay luz, no hay internet, pero bueno, tenemos de maravilla todos los servicios funcionando. Pero el tema de la seguridad alimentaria, de la soberanía alimentaria y del sistema alimentario, o sea, es un enfoque sistémico. Me gustó mucho lo que acabas de decir, y Vicente, sobre todo el proceso que se manifiesta con qué hay en los sistemas. Yo a todo ese listado que muy bien nos ilustraste, le plantearía el tema del liderazgo, ¿verdad? Liderazgo de las mujeres en este caso, cómo invertimos en ese liderazgo para el tema directamente de la demostración o el piloto. Acá teníamos una escuela basada en general en los derechos de las mujeres a la ciudad. Con el tema pues, de COVID-19, lo volteamos al tema del sistema alimentario y a la práctica de sistemas alimentarios, porque me parece que en escenarios complejos, y vamos a tener más, o sea, este año está anunciado para el Caribe, de este lado del mundo, 11 huracanes, además de los que tuvimos el año pasado, que fueron 7, con el tema del calentamiento global, vamos por 11 ahorita, y básicamente pues la implementación, ¿verdad?, de los espacios en este sentido, tiene que ver mucho con el aprovechamiento de los temas a nivel local. Pero, por ejemplo, estamos tratando de que los municipios adopten el sistema alimentario como uno de sus principales, digamos, prácticas en los espacios públicos. De esa cuenta, quiero comentar y quiero compartir con toda la comunidad de UCLG que Centroamérica y República Dominicana y la Red Mujer y Hábitat de América Latina y Caribe también participó de ello. Acabamos de definir nuestro plan 3Rs, quiere decir recuperación, reconstrucción y resiliencia. Este plan pues, fue impulsado debido a COVID-19 por Eurosocial y también pues, por los gobiernos nacionales y locales. Y decir entonces que nosotros trabajamos en 3 diferentes ejes en este plan. El primer eje era relacionado con protección social, todos los sistemas de protección social afectados por la pandemia. El segundo, la empleabilidad. Y el tercero fue asentamientos informales y desarrollo urbano sustentable. Por supuesto que la red y en mi persona teníamos que impulsar el tema de sistemas alimentarios dentro de este eje 3 y me da mucho gusto comentar que se aprueba entonces uno de los proyectos principales de este plan 3Rs es el programa de mejoramiento barrial en Centroamérica y República Dominicana. Y allí mismo hemos incluido el tema de los sistemas alimentarios como procesos locales, como el primer, digamos, gran eslabón que teníamos con este COVID-19, adoptarlo y decir entonces que enfrentarlo de una manera desde las autoridades locales, desde el sistema, digamos, de municipio al Consejo Comunitario de Desarrollo que toma decisiones a nivel local. Está ya incluido el sistema alimentario y queremos entonces como plantearlo, así como lo planteó Vicente de muy buena manera, Decir entonces que, ya me dijeron del tiempo, ya voy, ahorita voy, que el tema del Plan 3R en Centroamérica y República Dominicana va vinculado al PRINAU, el Plan Regional de Implementación de la Nueva Agenda Urbana. Y también me da mucho gusto decir que allí ya incluimos también el tema de los sistemas alimentarios. Tengo más que compartir, pero bueno, me voy a esperar para los próximos eventos y muchísimas gracias a ti, querida Emilia, por invitarnos y a toda la comunidad de UCLG. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Sorry, our time is a little bit tight. I also made a big move while I was facilitating this panel. I moved Valencia to Barcelona, but before the end of this meeting, I'll move it back to Valencia. Domingo, don't worry. Vicente, I will move it back to Valencia. Now, let me go next to my friend, Zach, from who is the Director of Food and Waste Climate Solutions and Networks of C40. Zach, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I will keep it very short, as you have heard so many wonderful things. C40 is so thrilled to be a part of this conversation. And I like to, this is called Cities Are Listening, but I can also tell you cities are acting and cities are doing. And so I think that the wonderful thing that we have here is that C40 is very committed to working with all of our partners to raise the voice of cities in these conversations, to show that cities are acting and that cities are nimble and coming up with solutions. So as we look at helping to deliver this transformation of our food systems to a more sustainable one, we know that cities provide the opportunity to influence demand, which will then influence supply. And so working as part of a systems approach, we are thrilled to be part of this conversation. We have a cities discussion tomorrow and on Thursday to elevate the voice of cities into the UN Food Systems Summit, to participate with the Glasgow Declaration at COP26, and to help provide input into the Nutrition for Growth Summit and the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact with our great friends in Barcelona. So echoing everything that's been said, we're thrilled to be a part of this, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thanks, Kostas.
Thank you very much, Jacques. Now, my last and not least speaker is Sophia Elise Quist, Project Coordinator, Food Policy and COP26, Nourish Scotland. Sophie, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Kostas. And I'll try and keep this brief as well, because I know we're running a little bit over. So thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm Sophie Quist, and I'm here on behalf of Nourish Scotland, a Scottish food justice organisation where I work, and also IPES Food, our lead partner on the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration. And thank you so much both to Seraphine and Zach for bringing the declaration up. So the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration is a commitment by subnational governments to tackle the climate emergency through integrated food policies. And this declaration is befitting to this panel. It's all about partnerships, as it aims to unite and amplify the voices of local and subnational governments, leading on food system sustainability in a commitment to and a call on national governments to act as well. And that's all part of a wider process of elevating local governments and food systems at COP26, where we hope to welcome you in Scotland, in Glasgow, later this year. And the declaration, very briefly, it was drafted over the last year together with networks, NGOs, and local governments, many of whom are on the call today. And currently 40 local governments have signed, and we hope for this number, of course, to pick up towards COP in November. The declaration itself calls for food policy coherence and for a food systems approach to climate change. And I won't go too much into the need for that, because others have articulated that so well. Exactly how tackling climate change and increasing our resilience as we build back from COVID-19 is tied to our capacity to develop more sustainable, just and healthy food systems. And one of the building blocks of this is coherence between different levels of governance and also across the areas of food systems, which can help affect the multiple challenges that are both caused and faced by food systems today, whether that's climate or nature loss or ensuring equitable livelihoods or the right to food for everyone. And all of this is really relevant to COP26, where member states are renewing and driving up their commitments under the Paris Agreement with nationally determined contributions. The conference is facing a monumental challenge of closing the gaps between the goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees and the current commitments which fall short of that, and simultaneously ensuring a just transition that's inclusive of all actors across the food system. And so the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration and this whole partnership around is insisting that this cannot be done without food systems or without cities and local action. And however, a challenge, of course, is that food systems are not considered holistically in the program and the themes of COP. So this is something we need to work on and to elevate at the conference ahead of November. And cities and subnational governments are absolutely best placed to address this gap. As Emilia put it so well at the beginning, food is no longer an afterthought for subnational governments. And it's quite unique as well to have Scotland and Glasgow, who are both subnational and local governments, who are strongly committed to food sustainability and climate justice, hosting COP26. So quickly looking at our plans, we plan to present the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration, building the movement and presenting it at a high-level meeting in Glasgow in November, inviting signatory governments and supporting national policymakers along. But we're also going to be working with others on the call today, including the Urban Food System Working Group and the Barcelona Challenge, on creating a shared messages and really building up partnership on the road to COP. As well as creating platforms for sharing knowledge between the signatories and on exactly how you adopt these integrated food and climate plans. So I'll finish just quickly on an invitation to get involved, to join us as a partner or to sign the declaration if you're representing a local government. And I want to just stress that the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration isn't aiming to build a new network. These networks already exist and are doing amazing work. It's very much complementary to all of the existing subnational government networks and aiming at amplifying those voices and building a shared message for COP26. So thank you so much for the invitation and to all the other inspiring speakers.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Let me, I'll take 1 minute. Is it? I'll take 1 minute before I pass. I hear another language. Before I pass the floor to Emilia, I think I learned quite a bit from this session. One hears partnerships and one thinks of people partnering or institutions partnering, etc. So I started from a little bit of a closed-minded approach, and then I learned quite a few things. That is, I heard about that you need partnership between urban and rural communities within a territorial approach. Between rural and urban, let's say, governments and stakeholders within a territory, which was very eloquently presented by UN Habitat, and the stakeholders across the rural and urban continuum. We heard about partnerships as links between policy, legislation, different disciplines across sectors. So you have a cross-sectoral partnership and cross-discipline one. I think the most complicated one with the most components was presented by Vicente, who he apologized, but he had to go, who mentioned at least 20 of components of food systems that have to be linked together, one of them being migration, for instance, in order to have a holistic approach, what he called a different type of multilateralism. Areas of knowledge that have to come together in order to be able to look at food systems the right way. We also heard about the different plans of which we heard the recovery, reconstruction, or resilience plan, of which a food system is a component, an important component, but it is a component of other systems and other initiatives, right? And local systems in particular. And then finally, the importance of amplification of the voice of urban and local governments in the context of the climate of the COP26, where the different levels of government and components of the food system have to come together. And so far, the COP26 does not consider them to be part, and we all have to work for that. So thank you very much for very inspiring ideas within a very short time. Thanking again, I also want to thank the interpreters for an excellent job, and then pass the floor to Emilia. Emilia, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Costas. Muchísimas gracias a todas y a todos por estas intervenciones que creo que nos han hecho efectivamente aprender mucho. Siempre cometemos un error en estas reuniones que hacemos internacionales de CGLU, y es que queremos que hable demasiada gente y después no conversamos entre nosotros. Pero como esta no va a ser la última, pues yo estoy segura de que podremos intercambiar ideas sobre lo que ya hemos compartido hoy en las próximas ocasiones, e ir dándole forma a esos mensajes que tiene que componer nuestras recomendaciones a ese proceso internacional de desarrollo de políticas que supone para nosotros tanto la cumbre sobre los sistemas alimentarios, pero también otras como la COP y la revisión de la nueva agenda urbana que traía a colación ONU Habitat muy acertadamente. En todos esos procesos, esta gran red que representa CGLU, una gran federación de federaciones, estamos trabajando para que haya una voz estructurada y estructurante de los gobiernos locales, ¿no? en todos estos procesos. So indeed, food is not only about government, but it needs to include government, and local and regional governments need to take responsibility in this. We need to create also a kind of food citizenship and a responsibility and a new notion of the role that we can all play individually, but also collectively. And that will build into this notion that food cannot be an afterthought of public policy making, in particular at local and regional governments level. I think there is the link between culture, food and climate has been very, very strong and very apparent. And I am very grateful to Maite for always bringing this perspective of the role of women, the very strong role of women, of smaller producers, and the linkages between these different agendas that, from our perspective of United Cities and local governments, will be transforming our world. Food is a critical component of the care society that we want to work towards. And we hope we will continue these discussions with meeting the invitation of Barcelona to have more and more cities taking on this invitation to join the Barcelona commitment, to have more and more cities around the world, local and regional governments, to join the notion around the good food declaration. I think everything has been said. I will just say, just take this as one first step. Let us contribute to the dialogue towards the food summit. Let us put our heads together, our actions, and also our hearts. If anybody else has something very, very smart to say, the floor is yours. I don't see any hands. Are we all happy? Did we do a good job today? Then if we are, I would say thank you very much. See you soon again. We've got a lot of homework. See you soon. Thank you. Keep healthy, please. Eat good food and enjoy it. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.